Welcome to AI to Z, your gateway to the world of STEM and the careers shaping its future. Hosted by Airswift's Chief Revenue Officer, Anna Frazzetto, we delve into artificial intelligence, health tech, and more. With insights from industry leaders, Anna not only demystifies STEM, but also highlights the exciting career paths within. Whether you're an enthusiast, a professional, or considering a STEM career, tune in and journey with us into the future.
Hello, Merav. So great to have you today on the podcast. Let me just introduce you to the listeners. So Merav is co-founder and chief executive officer of Data Society. She has over 10 years of experience in instructional design, training, and teaching. And you started your career teaching elementary special education in New York City, one of my most favorite places on the planet. But today, you continue to drive innovation and growth under your leadership, and that Data Society has been listed as one of Inc. 5,000 fastest growing private companies in 2021 and in 2022. You were also named on Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year and in 2021 Mid-Atlantic Award finalist. So, Merav, you have been dealing with data for over 10 years, and you probably have seen quite the shift in demand for data. So I think it'd probably be a great place to start if you kind of take me through the journey and how you've seen the demand for data really change over the years.
Absolutely, Anna. Thank you for having me. And I'll add, we just got on the Inc. 5000 list for the third year in a row. So we can add that to the list as well. That was a wonderful reflection of the work that our team has done. And it's really, I'm proud to represent them. In terms of the way that we see data and how it's shifted, when we started Data Society back in 2014, our mission is to help professionals use data better. We do that with our custom data training programs. We do that with our technology solutions. And initially, a lot of the demand that we saw was more for traditionally tech-minded individuals. Can you train my technical team to do X? Can you train our tech team to do Y? There was a little bit of demand at the executive level. Can you help our executives develop these data strategies? But that's where most of the focus was. One of the biggest shifts that we've seen, especially in the past few years, is from data should be understood by only these certain folks to data needs to be understood by everyone in the organization in order to make sure that we have a common data vocabulary, that we are leveraging the data that we have more effectively, and that we're empowering everybody to do their jobs better and to support stakeholders and constituents and clients more effectively. So that's one of the biggest shifts that we've seen, where we're at this point where data is for everyone. You're hearing about data democratization, data literacy, and people are just excited to be able to use it better, regardless of the position that they're in.
Yeah, what's interesting too, as far as what you kind of just laid out, is that the importance of data, like it's been around for, decades and decades. And I remember people would just be crazy about we need to gather more data. We need to understand more, gather more data. And actually, when you and I had a chance to kind of chat before, preparing for the podcast, we were kind of joking about when did statistics all of a sudden become data science, right? For years, in school, I was taking statistics, right? So it feels that the demand and access to data has really shifted from kind of looking backward to now, how can data help predict the future behavior or future, direction of either service offering products or better health, whatever, using it for more predictive, especially when you kind of add AI into the mix, which really has had a tremendous amount of buzz over the last, few months. So please share what you're seeing in the market today. Where are we going? What are some of the challenges and opportunities of using data to kind of predict the future behavior shift?
I'm really excited about AI. I consider myself a realistic optimist. So I like to think that overall it will be helpful to us as a society. The explosion that we've seen in interest in AI and generative AI has really been fun to watch in some ways. People are understanding what this technology can do. And it has existed, just like we talked about, data science and machine learning has existed for many, many decades. The same with generative AI. It's been around for a while, but only now are we seeing that shift because it's become more accessible to everyone. So one of the most interesting shifts that I've seen is taking this powerful technology and then being able to package it in a way that's accessible to people to use. So it's almost that UX or that UI component that I think has shifted a bit. Where I think AI is going, I'm seeing it almost in a way to when the internet became more ubiquitous, where people were really worried about society and jobs and things like that. And I'm seeing a lot of those same existential questions. Will there be some job loss due to AI? I think that's inevitable. Will there be new jobs that didn't exist? I also think that's inevitable. Think about the position of a social media manager. That was not a thing 20 years ago, right? And now we have whole marketing teams that are built around that, around AdWords and LinkedIn and X and Instagram and all of that. So I think we're going to see a lot of opportunities pop up. One of the most powerful positive ways that I've seen AI be used is supporting new team members, new employees with information from more experienced individuals. So I'll give you an example. There's a great case study about a call center in which new hires had a chatbot on their computer that actually had compiled all of these very successful conversations from more experienced customer service agents. So when they're on a call with a client, they can type in the problem and actually get recommendations for responses that's based on best practices. So instead of them having to shadow that individual for an extended period of time or bother them, take them away from their work, they have all of that knowledge right there in front of them. And what that led to was better customer service. And even for those newer customer service agents, they felt more supported. There was lower turnover and there was higher morale. And that's an excellent example of how we can support newer team members by building these types of tools internally on top of the information that we already have. So that's a really exciting part of it. We are very passionate about using AI responsibly. So we also really want to be mindful of the data that we're collecting, the permissions that we have to use that data, how we're storing it. Do we have, can we delete this data? Are there biases in the data? Traditionally, yes, if it's based on the society that we live in, right? Data quantifies the world around us and quantifies those patterns. So making sure that we know AI is the first draft and it's not the final draft, making sure that we have a human layer at those critical steps to confirm, to double check, to make sure that the output is accurate and achieves the goals that they're looking for without causing undue harm. So that's the balance that we have to strike with this type of technology.
Yeah, and it's first of all, I come from a technology background, so to me, AI is like, oh my goodness, this is like the greatest thing ever as far as watching it, evolve and grow, and quite frankly, there's a lot of discussion: is this an evolution that's taking place, or is it a revolution because it's such a giant leap forward? How can AI be used to make data analysis more efficient and more, accurate?
So layering in, AI on top of the analysis that we already do can help us identify better opportunities because you're just using more powerful models to be able to identify some of those patterns in a way that you weren't able to before. I think it can help provide a direction. It can help us direct us to ask the appropriate questions. One thing that I will say, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Anna, in the work that you do, is that not everything needs AI. I feel as though I have a lot of conversations with my clients where they say, okay, we need to incorporate AI here and here and here. And the question I ask is, why? Right? There are many different types of machine learning models that do a fantastic job with far fewer resources that can get you 80 to 90% of the way there. So one of the questions I like to ask, I encourage our listeners to ask, is why do we need AI for this particular thing? Because most of the time you might not. And when we think about the impact that we have on sustainability and on climate change, the amount of energy that it takes to run these types of models is tremendous. And so if we're running them willy-nilly because we can, and maybe we don't care as much about the cost, it has costs in different ways too. So, I think that AI layered on top of the analytics that we have can help us bring more of a predictive and prescriptive nature to the outcomes that we might not have had before. The question that I have is, what is the delta in benefit? And what are the costs that we need to keep in mind with that? So it is a little bit of a push and pull scenario there.
Right. So, it's interesting when you were talking before about, definitely jobs are going to be going away, but new jobs are going to be created. We've seen this pattern in the IT STEM sector, happen over and over again. I remember when digital transformation first came out, and it was like, oh my goodness, what jobs are going to be affected? Or, when you take a look at the turn of the century, and all of a sudden, all those COBOL programmers didn't have jobs anymore. It's reskilling, retooling, and AI, to your point, as far as accuracy of data, it's a tool. It helps, right? It kind of helps you get to have as close to that 0.999999, accuracy. But again, there's a human component to actually measure, monitor, and, review and assess what the right answer is. So I guess with that said, it's not like it's a replacement, which I think it kind of brings me to the next question, right? It's not replacing that human component. So let me ask the question about ethical considerations of using AI to analyze data. Like, what are your thoughts on that, and what are you seeing?
It's going to be increasingly a topic of conversation as AI continues to be more prominent. Any algorithm is built on data. And when we think about data and when we think about our history as a society, there have been injustices across the board, right? There's systemic issues that we still face. And the data encodes that. That's just how it is, right? Data is not good or bad. It tells it how it is at that base level. So when we are talking about building models to support decision making, right, we have to have these individuals. We have to have a human element to ask how we are mitigating these types of biases. Right? I think it's an ongoing conversation because it's not necessarily on the job of the people who are building the algorithm, but they should be mindful of it, right? It's the responsibility of the company to put in data governance structures. It's on the responsibility of the organization to make sure that these types of guidelines are promulgated within the company so that every individual is aware and they have this level of ownership. And we have to be very careful about who is the final decision maker, right? If we think about this like on life or death terms, right? Like let's say we have a generative AI model or an AI model tell us, hey, what targets should we hit if we are trying to attack, I don't know, a country or a terrorist group or something like that. It could be right, but we're talking about the lives of people. And if that machine gets it wrong, like you can't point to that algorithm and say it's the algorithm's fault, right? It's your responsibility. It's our responsibility. So we have to think about how we use it from that sense and how we collect the data. Do we get permission from everyone? We give people opportunities to opt out if they don't want their data to be used in the training set. Zoom recently had a really interesting use case for this where they turned on what they like to call Zoom IQ. And they said, hey, we're going to be using your data from all of your meetings to train up on this new helpful tool. And immediately a bunch of healthcare organizations and other organizations said, we're out. And Zoom walked it back very quickly. And instead of it being automatically like everybody opting in, it's opt out first, and people can opt in if they want to be able to use this tool, right? So things like that, we have to be very mindful about how our data is being used, and every individual has to decide for themselves, like, at what level am I comfortable with my data being used? We're all comfortable at it at some level because we're on the internet, right? So, if we have an Apple phone or if we are on Google, there's a lot of information that's out there. What is the level of comfort that we have with other companies having our data? That's a question on an individual level. And then making sure, IP rights are protected. That's another thing. There's a lot of lawsuits happening right now where authors feel as though their books have been infringed upon with a tool like ChatGPT, which can quote from those books. Things like that. All of these issues are ones that we're going to be seeing a lot more of. Overall, I think it's really important that as a country, as a society, we put guidelines in place that we can follow, both as companies and as individuals. Europe right now has GDPR. California put in place what they call the CPAA, which is similar. We need to have something like that across at least the US, I would argue across most countries, to make sure that we're giving people the guidelines that we expect from them and that we are helping people understand how their data is being used and how they can delete it. I think transparency is a huge, huge factor here. So the more transparency we can have, the more control we have over the information that we provide. So it'll be an interesting few years. Absolutely.
It definitely will. It's with everything in life. Anytime that there is a new tool or new technology, it can be used for good or for bad. So it's a matter of us, educating the public, educating companies, to your point of, from a country perspective, that we need to make sure that we kind of put the right parameters in there and we don't create a Skynet scenario where we feel like we're being taken over, right? Taken over by technology. So Merav, unfortunately, we're kind of coming to a wrap here. But what would you like to leave the audience with as far as like a closing thought or something to kind of focus on for the rest of the year in 2024?
If you are working with AI, if you're working in a company that's leveraging AI, ask questions. That's the one request I have. Ask questions about where the data is from, how it has been collected, what are the models that are being used, how is the output being used, what are the layers of accountability that we have. All of those questions will ensure that we are maintaining a level of responsibility and mitigating as much harm as possible. It's really up to us, right? It's literally a checklist of questions, That's all that it takes, so that we just have these points in time where we stop and think, is this appropriate? Are we doing this correctly? What are the potential consequences if we release this type of outcome? So, that's what I would ask. Ask questions. I think as long as we're doing that and we're being mindful of this type of technology, I am really excited to see how we can help benefit more people, support our society more, help provide more services. There's a lot of good that can come out of this as long as we're paying attention.
Absolutely. Ask questions. So coming from a tech background and also a sales background, being curious is the key to success. So totally agree with you. Thank you so much, Merav. Really a pleasure to have you today, and look forward to talking to you some more in the future.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Thanks for joining us on the AI to Z podcast with Anna Frizzetto. If you found value in today's episode, consider following for more insightful STEM discussions. We'll be back with another deep dive. Until then.